Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. Okay, the Epic Games Store, it's been a part of our lives for the last year, and to celebrate that fact, Epic have decided to unzip and show off their numbers. And you know what, they certainly are interesting. They actually reveal a lot about aggregate consumer behavior, something super important for us all to understand. So, I hope you enjoy this report. If you do, be sure to like, sub, and ring that bell for more like it. And with that, let's get going. So, the Epic Games Store, as I said, it's had its 1 year anniversary, that was last December, and Epic have kicked off the new year with an infographic that details the storefront's first full year of operations. Now, the Epic Games Store's first year saw $680 million in player spending across 108 million PC customers. It's a lot of people. Now, of this total, some $251 million was spent on third-party games. And the infographic emphasizes that this figure reflects actual spending by customers, and it does not account for the value of, coupons or Epic-led developer funding, things like that. Now, for the coupons, well, as it turned out, Epic funded over $23 million of them, plus other discounts. I mean, remember the Epic mega sale, where they pretty much just slashed $10 off almost everything and paid for it themselves? Yeah, turns out that might have worked. So, from all of this stuff, what can we actually tell? Well, Epic certainly is growing. They certainly are a force in the market. However, they are smaller than Steam in terms of their users, in terms of their sales. As per the SuperData 2019 report that we recently covered in the channel, 37% of US customers are Steam, I believe, and 17% are Epic. So Epic still is smaller than Steam, and I would also imagine there that, of that 37% of Steam users, I think they're probably more engaged in Steam, whereas I think that 17% of Epic, I think that is more fair weather people who've been brought in by things like free games and good deals. And on that, what's sort of revealed by this infographic is not that surprising. People like a deal, right? If people can get a game for a bit cheaper, they will generally go to where they can do that, be it a dodgy key website or somewhere like Epic. At the end of the day, our industry is experience-driven, and content is king. Now, of course, it wouldn't be one of our industry reports if I didn't try to make you a bit depressed. So, $600 and whatever million, fine. But you know what? That's smaller than Pokemon Go, smaller than a whole bunch of free-to-play mobile. I mean, check out last week's roundup, which has a segment on that. But yes, it does show that the PC premium market, it's big, but at the end of the day, there are things that are a lot bigger, and that is, just a little bit sad sometimes. Anyway, aside from all the money, the Epic Games Store have been dropping a bunch of free games on people pretty much consistently. Over the last year, that's 73 free games for a combined total of $1,500 almost, and they were downloaded 200 million times. Now, when the Epic Games Store launched, Tim Sweeney promised one free game every 2 weeks, so this figure actually does exceed that rate quite a bit. Now, the infographic also highlights that the free games have an average score of 80 on OpenCritic, and by the way, they're also, they now have OpenCritic as a dev-enableable feature, and I suppose it does show they're actually giving out good quality games for free. Now, this is an interesting trend because there are free games everywhere. You've got Twitch Prime, you've got Epic, and then you've got cheap games everywhere, like your Humble subscription, your Humble bundles, Origin, Games Pass. Now, we've talked about the devaluation of video games, really the devaluation of experiences and the knock-on effects that could have in the market, and it certainly is interesting. And I think this devaluation of games, well, what is it funded by? Is it funded by your pocket? No, because you're not directly paying for it right now. It is funded by the pockets of massive companies who are vying for you. At the end of the day, they know that gaming is a segment that is growing quite rapidly, especially in other countries, so they want to have, a nice high percentage of that for when the growth happens so they can capture that. So all of those massive cash reserves, like say your Fortnite money, they're going into expansion of the market. They are doing that by giving you a really good deal. And it turns out if those really good deals become the norm, then the economics of development, I think, could be thrown off a little bit. Right now, we're just in that weird, honeymoon phase where all the platforms are just in a big war. But eventually, that will quiet down, and I think we'll be left in a pretty different feeling industry. So going back to the infographic, it's no surprise that, the most popular things are the exclusives, be they timed or otherwise. The graphic highlights the likes of Borderlands 3, Untitled Goose Game, Control, The Outer Worlds as big standouts based on their sales numbers. Now, Epic have also confirmed that this list does not account for free-to-play titles, which does also explain Fortnite's pretty notable absence there. Now, exclusives will continue into 2020, that is what they've said, with titles like Predator Hunting Grounds and Godfall waterfall alongside many others to come. So yes, they are doubling down on that. That is what they're doing. Look, by their metrics, exclusives have worked. And if they can offer a good enough deal to, keep the publishers happy, such that they're okay to lose some of their customers, then, maybe it'll hurt the publisher, but for Epic, it will achieve their goal. Now, also some of those exclusives, like The Outer Worlds, like Metro Exodus, well, they were on other platforms, right? Like, say, Games Pass. However, if you look at Games Pass, there were some issues there with a few of those games, like as deployed on the Microsoft Store. And certainly, I think a bit of a revulsion towards Epic's business model has probably driven quite a few people towards Game Pass, especially for something like The Outer Worlds. But it's interesting to see that even in light of, Games Pass giving people a really, really cheap way to get access to those two games, well, seemingly Epic have experienced pretty solid sales. And well, to compound on that, on the infographic release, Epic seem to have just been sending their people around to do, just media laps, basically. I mean, it really seems like they're doing a victory lap here. So Steve Allison, the general manager of the store, told GameDaily.biz that the performance is exceeding their early expectations. Tim Sweeney, of course, Epic CEO, stated that third-party revenue is 60% higher than their launch forecast, and that the pace of free game installs is several times higher than initially expected. I mean, 200 plus million, that's a lot of free game installs. Now, he went on to state that the 108 million outlined in the infographic is the total number of Epic Games accounts which have specifically obtained the PC version of at least one product, whether it is free or paid. So clearly, they're growing this user base pretty darn quickly. Now, Sweeney also explained what free actually means, and this bit's kind of interesting. So Epic actually pay developers or publishers for the opportunity for their game to be free. Now, this compensation is, quote, negotiated to ensure that the developer gains more from the Epic payment and the resulting new customer influx than they would expect to lose in paid sales as the result of the free week. So that's kind of interesting. Sweeney then went on to reveal that some of the free launches have been strategically timed with the developers, with the publishers, to basically raise awarenesses of, say, their new upcoming projects. And it's quite interesting. I mean, this free game program, it's something that's been successful, and Tim said that it will continue throughout 2020. Now, this is so very pro-developer, I think. I mean, there are some developers who maybe would be a bit worried that they put their game out for free and then it would devalue it in people's minds, and then when it goes back up to RRP, maybe they'd sort of think, well, people won't buy our game at RRP because they know it was free at one point, so that is a concern. But I mean, they're just throwing a big lump of cash at the devs, and then they've got 8812 in terms of the split to back that up. And then if you use the Unreal Engine, you save another 5% because you don't have to deal with that licensing fee. And that really does mean that publishing on the Epic Store with Unreal is a lot more profitable than, say, developing in Unity and publishing on Steam, if you're an indie and you're not going to be getting that 25 or that 20% Steam cut. And overall, what this does mean is a bit more financial security for some indies. And I say some because it's not all. And I think the good thing here, and this is partially Epic being able to throw money at content, but it's also Microsoft being able to throw money at content, maybe even Apple doing it through Apple Arcade, that could mean that more risky, out there types of games could get made, because, well, some of the finances are actually decoupled from people putting their money into the game, which, I mean, it has its pros, it definitely has its cons. And I think in this case of the Epic Store, it's more going to be targeted at those premium feeling games. I mean, take Supergiant, right? Developers of Bastion. That is a game that's super well renowned, so people will think, oh, the next game from that studio that's really, something we really love, we're going to go to wherever that game is. So if it's an Epic exclusive, then yeah, there you go. They'll go to Epic. Whereas if it's, say, I don't know, the game we're going to put out this year, people don't know who we are. People don't know if we make great content. So it's not like we'd be a big draw into Epic. I mean, there's the audience thing, but you know what I mean? A lesser known indie that's not established as being a real premium quality thing, it's just going to be a bit different. So basically, those premium indies that are maybe doing some of the more crazy arty stuff that really get the big headlines, that are also pretty good at networking, pretty business savvy, are able to land those deals, yeah, it'll probably be good for them. Maybe less so for some of the others. Now, before we go on to Tim, there's one thing I want to know, right? So I think we can all agree that exclusives are not that pro-consumer in a case like this. However, giving people free games and bankrolling discounts, do you think that's pro-consumer? How does that actually work for you? Please let me know down below. I'm pretty interested to see where people lie in that one. Anyway, back to the man himself. So, exclusive titles are here to stay, and, quote, tons more are apparently on the way. Tim Sweeney said last year that he believed that an exclusive-centric strategy is pretty much the only thing capable example of changing the 70-30 status quo, and this belief does not appear to be going anywhere based on, well, the media sort of junket they did around this infographic. Sweeney told Game Daily recently that exclusives have been critical in gaining momentum in the presence of a competitor that began 2019 with more than 90% market share. Obviously, that's referring to Steam. Now, Steve Allison also revealed that exclusives currently account for some 90% of all new Epic Games Store releases to date and have driven the majority of revenue thus far. And Sweeney also said that exclusives are the primary way for companies entering new markets to gain momentum against established competition. And he did point out, say, Disney Plus launching against Netflix and Amazon Prime as another example of that happening in the market. Now, I mean, if we think of Disney Plus and, Peacock and all those random streaming services, what is that doing in the media landscape? I mean, it's just making people pirate. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm not going to say I've done anything, below the table or bad, but I mean, it's obviously going to drive people to piracy. That's just what's going to happen, and I think we're going to see that more and more in the streaming area. So when we're sort of seeing a lot of companies batten down the hatches with exclusives, you do kind of worry a little bit. Now, that said, I would like to bring up Microsoft because you would think that Games Pass could be one of those big sort of enveloping things. But if you take Master Chief Collection, that's on Steam, that's on the Microsoft Store, it's on Game Pass. It's decently open. Very much a different thing to what, say, Epic are doing and what Sony are doing. And we'll talk a bit about Sony very shortly. So I think what we obviously see here is that for Epic, by their own measurements anyway, it's a strong year, and at least that's what they're saying. Between the free game compensation, the exclusivity deals, they seem to just be fans of throwing money at the problem. That is much to the benefit of some select developers, and regardless of the consumer backlash, it does appear to actually be working for them. And yes, it turns out that Fortnite money actually lets you get away with a lot. Now, there are some implications here, right? I like to talk about big data and data-driven decision-making and how if you're a really vocal person and you really believe in something, you don't want to buy an Epic exclusive because you disagree with that business practice. Maybe you don't buy Sony exclusives because you disagree with that business practice. That's all well and good. But at the end of the day, what a lot of these companies are going to be relying on is the fact that there are actually a lot more people out there, and the strategies end up working because content is king and people actually do like a deal. In aggregate, in spite of all of that backlash, it seems like they have made some ground. I mean, there is even sort of here by their own numbers, but also in that SuperData 2019 year in review report that we also covered. I mean, for my personal angle on that, the mix of, backlash to Epic and then the media backlash to gamers, I think that's been really depressing, because I think we can all agree that less money to middlemen and more money to people actually make the games, and, having better designed platforms like Steam, those are all good things. We should all be moving in that direction. It's kind of sad that this has just created so much just discord and chaos. But, I mean, that is how it is. Now, with exclusivity, it's clearly going to keep on going here. For Sony, it's worked for years, but I think with Sony, it's a bit more fair because they fund development from the get-go, and they do make their own hardware. Very different from Epic, who are basically, they've even sniped Kickstarters that had Steam as one of their launch promises, which is just completely wild. So overall, I would say that yes, content is king, and this applies very interestingly to the next console generation. What have you got with Sony? You've got an exclusives first sort of strategy. What have you got for Microsoft? Well, they do have Halo Infinite, yes, they've got that. But they did say that, for the sort of 2 years after the Project X comes out, all of their games will pretty much run up and down the entire, family of products. And that means that Microsoft are going way less exclusive friendly. They're going way more about just having their hardware everywhere, their services everywhere, getting as many games through their stuff as they possibly can, which is pretty different to Sony's. And I think this is where we're going to see a super interesting battle, because if you're a really value-conscious gamer, it does seem like Microsoft are going to be giving you the better deal. However, if we are to say that content is king, people want those unique experiences, therefore they're going to go to some of the exclusives where they can get those experiences, i.e. Sony. We basically, through that, are going to see two different approaches to business compete with each other in this next console generation. And I, for one, am extremely interested to see where that goes. Anyway, there you go. That is the news of, Epic's self-reported numbers and a bit of our industry analysis of what they could actually mean. So with that, I'd love to hear what you've got to say about everything we covered today. And yeah, cheers. I'll see you next time.